Hi guys, so today I thought it'd be fun to sit down and do the get to know the fantasy reader tag. I've seen a few people do this video now, as well as the sci-fi version. I think there's a romance version. I think there's lots of different genres for this. So as I'm predominantly more of a fantasy reader, I would say I thought it'd be fun to sit down and do this one. So let's just get straight into it. The first question is, what is your fantasy origin story? The first fantasy novel you read? So I believe, from what I can remember, one of the first fantasy stories that I read was Sabriel by Garth Nix. I remember at a time I was borrowing a lot of books in the library, so I was waiting between birthdays and Christmases to buy them, and then years later I stumbled on this and I recognised the name, and I thought I had read it before. I obviously didn't make a note of this was before Goodreads or anything like that. And I read it and I fell in love once again. So yeah, this is, I would say, my first recognition of fantasy and falling in love into the world of fantasy writing, and I was just so happy that stumbling upon it again in my later years, I still loved it. So yeah, Sabriel by Garth Nix. The second question is, if you could be the hero or heroine in a fantasy novel, who would be the author, and what's one trope you'd insist be in the story? That's difficult. I'm also trying not to use the same author or the same book for something, but I think I'm gonna have to say either Garth Nix or Neil Gaiman will be the author. And one trope I'd insist in my story, I think just the good old trope of like a quest searching for something. So yeah, that would be my, I don't know, it's difficult. I'm not into tropes like love triangles or anything like that, but I think just the cliche, typical on a quest, on a search, adventure for something, some magical item, I would say. So number 3 is, what is a fantasy you've read this year that you want more people to talk about, or want more people to read? And for that I've got 2. The first one is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I absolutely fell in love with this book. It's so difficult because I don't have a physical copy, so sometimes it's not in my head because I'm not seeing it every day like other things, but I do definitely want to get myself a physical copy of this. I adore it. It's about a magical home. It's about like this world where magic is in it, and it's like normal, but you've got these people that are non-magical humans, and they're kind of setting regulations and stuff for magical beings. And so there's this children's home where a group of kids are living, and our main character is set the task of going to basically survey and write reports on the school to deem whether it's safe to continue or if they have to shut it down, because there's a lot of interesting, somewhat perhaps quote unquote dangerous people living there. That's not the best summary, but please check it out. It's an amazing book. I think it's got a lot of love anyway. And another one is Come Tumbling Down by Sean Maguire. I think this is another one that a lot of people talk about, but I want more to talk about. I'm waiting to buy a copy of the next one, but I don't think it comes out until January, I think. But this is an amazing series. This is the 5th book, I believe, or the 6th book, a part of the Wayward Children series, which is like a portal magic sort of thing. Again, following a home for children with not necessarily magical abilities, but I've had the magical experience of going to another world and finding a magical world, and then for some reason or other have been kicked out of that world, and it's kind of how they're coping with that, and also with the hope of trying to find their door again to get back into that world. It's a fantastic series, very short reads, but very action-packed. You easily fall in love with the characters quite a lot, even though they are shorter. But yeah, I've just been really enjoying these sort of companion series. The next question is, what is your favourite fantasy subgenre, and what subgenre have you not read much from? My favourite fantasy subgenre, I would say, is like older, I don't know what you'd call it. It's not like necessarily medieval, but like old kind of fantasy, where they have like guilds and stuff like that, and dragons. So anything like the Trudy Canavan books, like the Priestess of the White, Age of 5 series, or the one I'm reading now, which is the Black Magician trilogy, or anything like Tolkien. I really love those sort of fantasies, really can sink your teeth into. Funnily enough, I've not been reading a lot of those these days, but those are at the heart of what I love. And a subgenre that you've not read much from, I would say, What's a genre of fantasy that I don't read much from? Maybe horror fantasy or like sci-fi fantasy. I never really go for that sort of blend. I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I've read much in that genre. What else? I'm a bit picky with urban fantasy. Like, it has to be a very particular setting. But yeah, those are those. Number 5 is, who is one of your auto-buy fantasy authors? I believe I made a video on this ages ago. I think it was like a top 5 Wednesday when I used to do more of those videos. But one of those authors, I don't know if they were on that list at that time, but one of them I would say is Ransom Riggs, who's the author of the Miss Peregrine series. He is, yeah, I just adore, I love his books. Even though he's only had like 1 series so far in his author career, I just know he's instantly going to be someone that I gravitate towards. Even if he does something completely different, I would love to try. Yeah, I've just fallen in love with his writing. Then we've got number 6, which is, how do you typically find fantasy recommendations? Goodreads, YouTube, podcasts, Instagram. I would actually say most of those. Goodreads is the go-to. I'm always seeing what my friends on there are reading or want to read or have reviewed. And then we've got YouTube. I'm always on BookTube, so I'm seeing lots of content involving like book hauls and recommendations and stuff like that. And then Instagram, I'm on Bookstagram a lot. Not so much book Twitter, but Bookstagram, I really like the aesthetic of like book pictures and stuff, so I'm always sort of, whether subconsciously or actively searching for new reads, I'm seeing lots of stuff there that I make a note of and instantly add on my Goodreads, or just like save the picture in that little saving function. Yeah, so I'd say the main ones are like actively, because where I'm searching for it or scrolling for a reason, would probably be BookTube and Bookstagram. What is an upcoming fantasy release you're excited for? I can't remember the name of it, but it is the final book in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series. I've yet to read the book called The Conference of the Birds, which is the current one, but I think the last one is coming next February, I want to say. So I'm really excited to see how it all wraps up, because it's taken a whirlwind. I think originally it was supposed to be a trilogy. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about the same author or same book, but some things just overlap, I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry, I really like interrupted myself. Originally I think it was supposed to be a trilogy, and then it just kept expanding, and I would like to see where Ransom Riggs takes us now and how it wraps up the whole adventure. But yeah, I've still got the current newer book to read. I think I'm savouring it, I don't know. The question 8 is, what is one misconception about fantasy you would like to lay to rest? I guess there's the misconception, if you don't read fantasy or you don't read much full stop, of that once you've read one fantasy you've read them all. In some context that is okay, because I mean with everything has been done before, so it's like you do generally have that formulaic kind of trope, that formulaic kind of plot, but there's so many nuances and niches and different subgenres and stuff that layers it and makes it feel like a completely new context. So I think yeah, a very good classic fantasy will have the elements that the originals have had from time, but they are, you know, you get these authors that really work with something different and make it their own and new and unique. So yeah, I don't think they're all the same. Again, you've got all these genres like the YA faction, the adult faction, like dragon, trolls, like all these different things, which, you know, and then your vampire fantasy, like all these different things. It's a very magical world, and there's lots of inhabitants. Basically, it's not just one thing that I think a lot of people would assume. That was very rambly, I don't know. Let's move on to the next question. Number 9 is, if someone had never read a fantasy before and asked you to recommend the first 3 books that came to mind as places to start, what would those recommendations be? I always stumble on this, but because I've had time to think about this, I just looked at my shelves because they were in front of me. It came to mind. I've got more that I would recommend, but the first 3 would most likely be Eragon by Christopher Paolini, which is the first, well, this is the bind up, but it's the first book in a cycle called The Inheritance Cycle, about dragons and like a young boy who stumbles upon the world of dragons, and there's like a prophecy of sorts. And yeah, war, battles, very big like life changes and coming into yourself and your strength and knowledge and power, and it's an amazing series. I'd also recommend Percy Jackson by Rick Riordan. This is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which is where it all began. This is the first book. There's been a few different spin-off series from it now. He's also heavily involved in the Disney live action TV series that's coming on Disney Plus that I'm so freaking excited for, because as with Eragon, there's been some failed movies that we don't talk about, but sometimes I still put on just for the lulz. So yeah, this is all about Greek mythology. It's a middle grade, so different sort of vibe, because you know it's aimed at a younger audience, but in that case it's generally easy to sink your teeth in and quickly devour. But yeah, if you like your Greek mythology or you want somewhere to start, this is kind of one of those things that really got me back into mythology and wanting to, like, a thirst to learn. So yeah, absolutely love that. Although previously I'd just stumbled on mythology and taught myself, and then I found that series and I was like, wow, it just infused it with a richer quality. And then I'd recommend anything by Neil Gaiman. I've got Coraline here, the graphic novel edition, which is adapted and illustrated by P. Craig Russell. Yeah, he does a lot of dark and macabre kind of stories, different audiences. He's got like the Sandman series, which is like a more adult comic series. He's got lots of different things aimed at like middle grade readers. I think this is technically a middle grade, but it's quite scary. So Coraline is about a young girl who moves to a new home with her parents, and her parents are they're just doing the normal adult boring stuff, trying to get the house in order, trying to get ready for sort of supplementing her into this new school and new area, and she's just bored, no one will play with her, and she stumbles on a door. So it's another bit of portal magic. She stumbles on a door that shouldn't really be there in her new house, and she finds herself in a place that is very similar to where she lives but very different. And it's very bloody freaky. But yeah, awesome story nonetheless. And the last question is, who is the most recent fantasy reading content creator you came across that you would like to shout out? I would say Books with Brittany. I think she's the one that I first saw like on my feed that had done this tag, and I love her vlogs that she does. Oh my god, she reads so much really heavy, intense fantasy as well. And yeah, I absolutely adore her channel. And then Brightness Katie Reads, who is so lovely. She's just full of life and love, and so she just, you know, when you're having a really crappy day and you just put her on, or one of her videos on rather, and it just instantly uplifts you. I'm not sure if she's done this tag, but yeah, she's one that I absolutely adore, and she does a lot of fantasy content. She really loves the Cosmere universe and Brandon Sanderson, so she's like my go-to person when I need to kind of get my headset back into reading them. I've only read the Final Empire, but she's got this awesome video, sort of putting in order how you can read the series, which is super uber helpful. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed. Let me know if you've done this tag yourself or if you would like to, and link your videos in the description if you want to, because I would love to watch and hear some of you guys' answers. And yeah, I'll speak to you in another video soon. Bye.